every square inch of that space was designed for combat, but it was also designed for exploration.
What's one aspect / component to Diablo 4 that you're excited for players to experience that they may not have yet seen?
I mean, I think the story is brilliant. I think that the narrative has been a really unexpected thing. It's one of the things that I think a lot of just seeing the reaction of players, they didn't expect us to be going that hard into like this very like intimate, close story, bringing the camera in super close, including your player into the cinematics in a very meaningful way.
Like looking at the betas we've done so far, I'm really excited about players getting a chance to like dig deeper into the classes that they're playing. Because there are these unique mechanics associated with every class, in Diablo 4 that make them feel very, very unique and distinct compared to those other classes. So when you finally get a chance to go and play in a live environment and start collecting your spirit boons and making choices with your spirit connection for your druid, or you're finally getting your master technique available for your barbarian, your other being able to use your spell enchantments on your sorceress. Like these are really distinct features of these classes that players haven't had a chance to see yet. And I'm really excited to see players dig into these things. I'm very stoked to see what the kind of like overpowered combinations they come up with.
Yeah, and just final thing, I think also just exploring the world. The world's really cool. There's so much in every corner. I think one of the things in it.
Yeah, they've seen the fractured peaks.
Yeah, like people have seen it a lot, which we're grateful because it really did allow us to kind of learn a lot. If you go exploring, you will find things that are interesting and cool, whether you're into the lore or whether you just like to find treasure or secrets or things like that. This is something that Blizzard's really good at, which is that we basically really put a lot of time in that handcrafted feeling of the open world. It is not, like every square inch of that space was designed for combat, but it was also designed for exploration. And we really we had the time, which was nice, to really put in that level of polish that I think that people will find and I think appreciate.
So in terms of the world of Sanctuary, what are some of the ways you wanted to change it compared to previous settings we've seen in the Diablo games, and specifically other takes on how?
We wanted players to have the ability to go all the way from the top of the world to the bottom of the world without ever requiring a loading screen. In previous versions, there was more of like a portaling aspect, meaning like you were kind of using a lot of portals to travel around. So this required us to think about the geography in a way that we never did before. So that like if you played in beta, Fractured Peaks is this sort of mountainous region with a lot of glaciers and different biomes. And in the southern region of Fractured Peaks, it actually starts to melt off. And then that melt off, then if you go into the zone or the region that's below is called Hawazar, the swamp. It's all the water that's coming from Fractured Peaks going down into Hawazar, which creates the swamps, right? And that sort of like living world geography was something that we had never had to think about before in a Diablo game.
One of the things that I believe that we focus on a great deal into very good effect in Diablo 4 is trying to tell more of the smaller stories of the people that live in Sanctuary. There are the events of, the Wanderer, the player character, of Lilith, of Inarius, the high heavens and the hells, but it's the stories that we get to tell about, like, the farmers in Skazgled who are trying to figure out how to get by, the widow in Hawazar who went there after in her grief. There are these smaller, quieter stories we could tell in Sanctuary about real people trying to scrape by living in this world.
Obviously, Diablo 4 takes a much more grittier approach than Diablo 3, more on the lines of Diablo 2. I'm sure this is something you've spoken about a lot.
Sure.
I was just wondering, sort of, what was the inspiration / your reasoning for wanting to go down that path and create a really dark and gritty take on Diablo?
If you just ask people what is Diablo, and they would probably say something like, it's a dark Gothic medieval fantasy. And we wanted to make sure that was true in this time that we're in now, and sort of at the time, like we know we're probably somewhere in 2020. What does that mean to be a dark Gothic medieval game? And dark Gothic fantasy is kind of having a renaissance right now with things like Game of Thrones and in different media, and so we really felt like we had the ability to kind of go out there and sort of like we want to be in that same kind of, like, we want that statement to be true of like that Diablo is a dark Gothic medieval fantasy. And a lot of things that have happened with technology and lighting and things that we can do now in games that you couldn't do 10, 15 years ago, we really, that really added to it, so that when you see that grittiness and that sort of like that mood and that tone, a lot of it really does come from the lighting and the setting and the level of detail that we've been able to add with the technology.
We're trying to tell a grounded story in Diablo 4 where we have clear motivations for characters, and players can sort of explore those motivations and ask themselves a number of questions along the way. Is Lilith right? Like, why is she doing this? Like, what right does she have to these people? Like, should we follow Inarius? Is Inarius right? You know, what is his responsibility to Sanctuary? You know, what do I do in the middle of this? And then these other stories of the characters, again, caught between these other quieter stories are happening throughout the world. You know, we don't have a story that's, you know, screaming from the mountaintops, you know, about the stakes of the world shattering and these things. You know, it's more of there's this undertone of threat and menace, you know, kind of laces throughout the experience in Sanctuary. We think is very engaging and distinct as an entry into the franchise.
Do you have like an idea in your head for how long you plan on supporting Diablo 4? And I'm just wondering, are there any lessons you learned either from Immortal, like other live service games, that you've factored in and, you know, in order to sort of meet players' expectations, seeing as you're promising them, you know, all this content?
Yeah, as I mentioned, so Diablo 3 has been a seasonal game for a long time at this point. We get a lot of really great like data information. We have like, you know, we're going to be entering season 29 soon.
Yeah, season 29
for Diablo 3. Yeah, and season 4 for Diablo 2 Resurrected. So like we have a lot of experience operating games like this inside our own universe of Diablo games. So we have lots of opportunities to look at there. In terms of like how long we're going to service the game, we'll be supporting Diablo 4 for years to come. You know, we have a never-ending sloosh of ideas of things we just want to get into the experience for players as we go. So we're really excited about like what season could offer us in terms of just being able to provide new and exciting like gameplay moments and be able to explore new characters and systems as we play. So
there's no end in sight. We're going to be making content for a very long time.
And then on top of that, we have expansions that we'll be talking more about soon, right? So there's going to be lots of opportunities to extend the story of Sanctuary and the events, again, of the Wanderer continuing on through Diablo 4.
Are there any plans in future to potentially add new character classes? Obviously, we have the Necromancer that's starting in this one.
Sure.
Introduced the Reaper of Souls. Is that something you're actively thinking about, or are you just hoping that people don't defy current?
We you know, I think that we always say there's always room around the campfire. True. But we are, we're just talking about Diablo 4, you know, and launch and just getting really hyped for, you know, like just coming off betas and Server Slam, you know, it just feels really good. And we're excited to have, you know, just for everybody else to just open the gates and get to see more of the world.
Obviously, we want to be looking ahead to the future, but I feel like Diablo 4, it kind of shocked people that this was a beta in the traditional sense, that we're testing server mode. We're, you know, tweaking classes, things like that, whereas I feel like a lot of other games, they just slap the word beta on and it's basically a glorified demo. How useful have those weekends been, and were you taken aback by the popularity of them? Obviously, you have some amazing player numbers.
Yeah, they were incredibly useful for us to pursue these beta weekends. So it is one thing to run internal testing and to have we have bots, so we have automated accounts that are running around performing basic actions on our internal hardware, like, you know, trying to kill things or pick up things or change the things they're wearing in their inventory. Basically just like having
simulations.
Yeah, simulations effectively, with millions of these accounts running around performing these actions for us to test our own hardware. But the nature of the data that you find when you allow real players into your servers, into your game, is vastly different and far more useful. So while these are really great, like, you know, it's a kind of a guess the sorts of things you need to learn. Getting real players with experience has been extremely valuable about determining, like, you know, what is ideal, like character load per server, like really important things that hopefully players will just not need to worry about.